to a Greater Reality Healing, Living, and Helping online meeting. A quick reminder, we won't be having meetings in December, but we'll resume in January. This program helps people take higher energy paths during their earthly experience. Doing that, especially after big changes that seem like losses, can create quantum leaps in your learning, growth, and service to others. Over time, this transformational journey can help you adopt a more accurate worldview based on contemporary understandings about the big picture of life and live accordingly, whatever that means for you. See article number 19 called The Great News About the Nature of Reality at soulproof.com. Experience shorter and lightened grieving after loved ones change worlds and other big changes that seem like losses. Fine-tune yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually so you have the vitality to handle life's demands and share your greatest gifts and soul's missions. Become more aware of, benefit from, and share life's silver linings that always accompany opportunities masquerading as adversity. Create the greatest life you have envisioned, and the term you refers to your higher self, eternal consciousness, and soul. Fulfill your highest purposes for being on Earth and help make our world a better place. This is now practically possible, as discussed in article number 125, 8 Developments for Widespread Conscious Living Now. As enough people do this, widespread personal and planetary change will naturally unfold. The evidence-based and holistic resources in this program can help you to do this. Note, this program is not designed to replace medical psychotherapeutic care or the services that Helping Parents Heal provides. Dr. Pitstick has worked with Helping Parents Heal for 11 years and recommends them as the best resource for parents, grandparents, and siblings after a child passes on. 3 30-minute parts of each online meeting include presentation, breakout groups, and then a Q&A. Breakout groups will not be recorded, but the rest is so that others can benefit from them. If you are concerned about being anonymous, just show your first name in your Zoom window and block your video image. YouTubes for the class recordings are under Greater Reality Programs at soulproof.com and soulphone.org. Subscribe to those newsletters for updates and more. So now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Mark Pitstick, MA, DC. Mark has over 50 years of experience helping many people in hospitals, pastoral counseling settings, mental health centers, and holistic health clinics. To learn more about Mark, visit soulproof.com/about. Dr. Pitstick's ebooks, audiobooks, audio programs, and documentary film are all free at soulproof.com/shop.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and good evening, everyone, and welcome. If possible, please enable your video so I can see you and gauge your reaction to things. And also, I want to take a little poll. So, for how many of you have been on at least one meeting before? Let me see your hand. Okay, great. Well, welcome back. And for how many of you is this your first meeting? Let me see your hand. Hard to tell because we have some people hidden. Well, if it is, welcome to your first one. So this is a community meeting. It's not a webinar. It's a way to meet other awakening people / souls. You realize we're both. We have a dual nature. And working together, we can achieve the meta goals of many people optimally healing, living, and helping. However, that happens one person at a time. So I'm focused on talking directly to each of you. So just consider that we're talking over a cup of tea, and I'm helping you learn how you can do that personally and share your greatest gifts. And when enough of us do that, guess what? The world comes together. Excuse me, as Jennifer said, we're going to have 3 30-minute parts. I'm doing the presentation and sharing session and the Q&A. Now, please have a pen and paper or another way to record important information on hand, because you'll need that later. So, Greater Reality Program, the term Greater Reality was chosen by Dr. Gary Schwartz and I Some of you know Dr. Schwartz, PhD, former Harvard, Yale, and University of Arizona professor, now the director of the Soul Phone Project at the Laboratory for Advances in Consciousness and Health. So Dr. Schwartz and I wrote the book together, Greater Reality Living. Well, greater reality refers to all that exists, the totality of reality. Other synonyms for that would be the nature of reality, the big picture of life, and how life is really set up. Because you understand that many of us grew up relying on religion for understandings about life, death, and afterlife. And they get about a D minus, and I'm being kind there. So it's nice to be alive now and learn contemporary evidence-based information about the nature of reality. And it's all great news. It's all wonderful. And we certainly want to get that out to as many people as possible. So thank you for sharing that. We just need to be able to sense more of the big picture of life. And a story I'll never forget, I was speaking at a Helping Parents Heal group, and a mom named Sharon was telling us both of her children had changed worlds. And the group was like, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. And she said, thanks, but they're really in touch a lot. She said, in some ways, I see them or hear from them more than when they were on Earth. And she said, here's the most recent one. She was getting ready to go to bed, and from the foot of the bed, she heard her daughter's voice. And the daughter said, Mom, can you hear me? And Sharon said, I can hear you, but I can't see you. And her daughter said, Mom, you need to get bigger eyes. And that's it in a nutshell, class over. I mean, that's it. If you get that, you get the whole message. So that's what we're working toward. Now, to be clear, these meetings don't teach everything you know to optimally heal, live, and help, but they do provide the information, the resources, the support so you can learn at your own pace, because it is a lot, and especially depending on how much you've gone through. My gosh, I just got an email today from a woman whose mentally ill husband killed their 12-year-old son, and then he killed himself by suicide. And she's like, what do I do? I'm like, oh my God, this happens out there. So we're all needed to help people who are going through tough times. And this training will help you, but it'll help you help others. Now, for this key tonight, my presentation may seem offensive if you believe in fundamentalist fear-based preachings now, which I'm guessing if you're a meeting like this, you don't, but I need to cover the bases. But you may still feel uncomfortable if you used to believe such things, but aren't totally sure what's most accurate about life, death, and afterlife. So if either is true for you, I totally understand. I went through it myself. For the first 18 years of my life, I was raised Lutheran, which is a pretty moderate Protestant denomination. But then for 3 years, I attended a fundamentalist church for the most important reasons of all for a young man. My girlfriend attended there. So, that did a job on me. And by the way, I never named denominations or churches in a negative way. I want to say fundamentalist. But afterwards, I was an agnostic or atheist for a while. And it required a lot of work. I always felt close to Creator and even Jesus, but it required a lot of work for me to release anger toward these preachers and also toward the silent majority ministers. You understand that the great majority of Christian denominations, and I'll mainly talk about Christianity now because Joseph Campbell says that's the only religion that for which some denominations teach a fiery eternal hell. But the great majority of denominations don't believe in hell. They don't seriously consider it all. They consider it a metaphor, how it feels when you're separate from your source and from your true nature. However, the minority of denominations that do believe in fiery eternal hell, they're so vocal, they're so vociferous. I mean, for guys, you go in to a bathroom, to a urinal, and there's pamphlets sitting on top there, and you kind of can't not see it. It's just sitting right there looking at you. So it took me a while, and so I actually wrote this article about this topic. I think it's article number 137 because I received three emails in the same day. People saying, I was traumatized by fundamentalist teachings. How do I heal that? How do I release that? One woman, for example, she's saying, I go to sleep every night. I'm afraid to go to sleep because I'm afraid, even though I've pretty much sure there's not an eternal hell, what if there is and I wake up in it? So, life's tough enough as it is with real problems without having these needless misunderstandings affecting us. So we're talking in this presentation about key number 16, traumatized by fear-based preaching, how to heal and upgrade your knowledge about life, death, and the afterlife. So here we go. By the way, my voice is a little raw. I was telling the moderators, I went to a Paul McCartney concert Saturday evening and yelled my head off. He played for almost 3 hours. And but I'll get through this. So 5 of the most common fear-based preachings, there are others that especially traumatize people that I know from having worked with them firsthand are first, you might end up in a fiery eternal hell because fill in the blank. Next, thou shalt fear the Lord thy God. Next, you were born into sin because, again, fill in the blank. A fourth, there's only one true religion, God, and way to salvation. And finally, God took my loved one away because. So these and other fear-based preachings have scared and scarred many people. And as mentioned in 2025, we can do better, much better than this. So what I've seen is that free thinkers, especially those who remember the big picture of life even a little, reject these limited teachings and want nothing to do with religion or this kind of God. When I was hosting one of my radio shows, I got a caller, a woman from Alabama, and an elderly woman, and she's told when she was a little child, they went to a fundamentalist church. Her parents took her, and the minister was really laying it on fire and brimstone. So they're getting ready to go out the door and stop and shake hands with the preacher. And he said, well, what did you think about my sermon today, young lady? And she said, I don't believe there's a hell. God wouldn't do that. And he said, well, if you don't believe that, then maybe you shouldn't come back here. And her parents said, you're right, maybe we shouldn't. So in that case, the little girl's alarm went off, her parents were supportive, and she wasn't traumatized by it. Unfortunately, some people don't remember, don't have a strong intuition about the nature of God and life, and or don't have parents who are supportive. And then they get traumatized. So in defense of religion, the Old Testament started to be written in 1500 BC and was finalized around 500 BC. So it's over 2,500 years old. And you realize that back then and well into the Dark Ages, most people couldn't read or write. So you had to keep it really simple with them. If you're good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to hell. I mean, there wasn't a lot of nuance there. There wasn't a lot of room for distinctions. Also, and this may surprise you, there were unscrupulous church and political leaders who gained power and money when people were scared, easier to control. So that's an age-old ploy. So there's another aspect to it. I remember when I was a child, the parental kind of rule was scare kids. I mean, my parents would say the boogeyman. If you don't get to bed and go to sleep, the boogeyman's going to get you. And, we thought it was half serious, half kind of funny, the boogeyman. By the way, that's one of the original meanings of the word hell in the Aramaic language. Um, every village had a burning pit where they burned their trash and so on. Sheol, Gehenna were different terms for it. And that became an idiom the parents would say to the kids, if you're not good, we're going to throw you in the burning pit. And so what was an idiom, kind of what parents are trying to do to control their kids, became mistranslated or in some cases purposely changed to control over the ages. So it's really time to understand this better. Now, excuse me. Shouldn't have yelled so much. Um, Now, to be clear, kids need to be scared, say really clearly told when it's something that can hurt them. Don't touch that hot stove. Don't touch that outlet. It's for their own best. But when it comes to existential matters, what's death about, an afterlife, the nature of God, that's not a time to use fear tactics to control people. It hasn't worked. It's worked horribly. And over the years, many people I've worked with who say they're atheists or agnostics, really, it turns out they just reject the traditional view. Big guy in the sky that controls everything, smites and judges people. And, heaven or hell, you got two choices. So this is really important to change around. I I feel like I was able to catch things throughout my life that were really important. So one was on my first day of theology school, and one of the big reasons I went was to clear up um, apparent misunderstandings. I was taught in church, like you have a God of love and caring, and yet he would have a fiery eternal place forever. I mean, it just add up. So I went into the bookstore and I walked in, and here was a display of books. And the first one I looked at was a book called Hell No by Reverend Robert Love. And I feel like that wasn't a coincidence. I saw that right off the bat. Well, in it, I read a wonderful statement by an Oxford professor of language and classical scholarship, Max Muller. And he said, and I had this saying in front of me for
Oh,
years, in front
no.
of my desk. That's how important it was. So Mueller said, nothing can be really true that offends the sensibilities of a child. Wow. I mean, how's that for some powerful dynamite? So that's a great
Mm.
litmus test as we examine this key. Now, a few comments about the above fear-based preachings. First, you might end up in a fiery eternal hell forever. Well, many people have suffered greatly due to needless fears that they'll burn forever because, for example, they weren't baptized or saved, they didn't attend the right church, they didn't attend often enough, they sinned too much. At this fundamentalist church I mentioned, there was actually a list they created. And, some of them were understanding. We were teenagers, shouldn't smoke, shouldn't drink, but dresses below the knees, you shouldn't dance, you shouldn't sit too close, guys and gals. And I looked at that list, I'm like, I was, I'm not going to make this. There's no way in hell. I just saw that right off the bat. Another thing, people fear they're going to go to hell because they question their church's teachings instead of just blindly believing. So
Mm.
as a psychologist for many years and a holistic physician, I know the inside story. People tell their deepest fears and worries to their physicians and counselors. So I know how deeply this one runs, fear of hell. Example, I worked for many years with a woman named June. She was a pillar in our community, attended a Methodist church. She was involved in all kinds of community outreach. She was always working to help others. Well, she was about 90 years old, and I could see she was slipping, and there's nothing more her team of doctors could do. And so I just felt like it would be the last time I would see her. And I just said, June, I just want to tell you what a blessing it's been to know you for these years. I mean, let's face it, we all pass on at one point. And I look forward to seeing you someday in heaven. And she stopped and she got this real concerned look on her face. And she said, I sure hope I end up there. And she looked up and not the other place and looked down on the ground. And I thought, oh my God, if somebody like June fears in her heart of hearts a chance she might go to hell, what kind of way is that to live? And what do other people fear who, maybe a case could be made that they at least ought to visit, if not stay forever. All right, the next one, thou shalt fear the Lord thy God. I heard that as a kid, and I thought, wait a minute, that didn't make sense. The teaching was God is much better than the very best earthly parents. Well, I had great parents. I didn't fear them. Why would I fear God? And so that, again, that's one of the reasons I went to theology school, and I looked it up, and the word fear could have just as easily been translated as respect. And I felt angry. I like, well, why didn't they use the word respect? Well, it doesn't scare people for starters. So just little things like that create such a difference. That's one reason I like to use feminine pronouns for the divine, because when you use the word like she, God, she, um, would not send anyone to hell. It's like, yeah, maternal, mothers, love, the feminine energy. Yeah, that makes sense. These wrathful things that supposedly God would do make even less sense when you use her and she with them. So the last thing I want to say about that is that we know from clinical evidence, from near-death experiences and life between life sessions, that we each are integral and beloved parts of the light right now. Not maybe someday if we believe a certain way or do certain things, but that's the way life is set up. As such, why would we fear our own nature and source? The third, fear you were born in the sin because fill in the blank. Again, I mean, it just occurred to me, my minister must be a pain in the behind, because this is in the Lutheran church. They told the stories because Adam sinned, all people are born in the sin. I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Some dude lived a zillion years ago. He sinned supposedly, so the rest of us are born in the sin. How fair is that? Well, another explanation for it is, well, the flesh is weak and sinful. And yet, as stated in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, and God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. And yet, chapter 6, just 5 chapters later, he was planning on how to destroy all the humans, or most of them, in a flood. And again, the logical, or the part that thought for myself, said, really? God said it was very good, and then 5 chapters later, they're going to wipe them out? So this is one of many examples why religious texts, sacred texts of any type, should be taken seriously, but not literally, because things have been changed. And this particular one, you're born into sin. Think of the amount of fear, confusion, and self-loathing that creates. And then people just perpetuate, well, born into sin, what chance do I have? And might as well not even try. Lord. Next one, there's only one true religion, God and way to salvation. Again, as a youth, I wondered, and I asked our minister, well, what about people who are brought up in a different religion? What about people who are mentally imbalanced, insane? What about people who are brain damaged and they can't decide or reason for themselves? Well, in each case, I was told, well, God has a special plan for them. So it wasn't much of a reach to realize God has a special plan for all of us, and especially now I know that we're one with the one and part of Source. So you so you realize that there is one true way, yeah, and that is to realize how life is set up, that you're part of God right now, that you're eternal being of consciousness, soul, those kinds of things. One of my yoga teachers for many years, Swami Satchidananda, said, truth is one, paths are many. And I like that, a respect for the different paths and religions and so on. And the last one, God took my loved one away because, and this is perhaps one of the most damaging fear-based preachings, because the question arises when people are grieving. They're facing fears about death. Are they ever going to see their loved one again? So I especially hear this from parents who say, why did God take my child? And it's heartbreaking, really, if you don't know more about the big picture of life. But I try to break it down and say, well, let's see, what's your definition of God? First of all, we're all part of that. God didn't take your child. And this little one is only your child in this particular space-time slice of life. In truth, your child's a soulmate, an eternal soul also, who quite likely chose it was time to move on for good reasons that we on earth can't usually fathom. Um, Now, I hear from many of these parents what their ministers say. Some of the most common responses, it's God's will. Oh boy, that one really fills you full of comfort, doesn't it? God knows best. Or the one that really pisses people off, God wanted your son or daughter to be with him, so he took them. And parents are like, well, that SOB, really, God needs my daughter more than we do. So, and again, having gone to theology school, I'm aware how little counseling there are, how little pastoral counseling. So these men and women aren't really trained to know what to do, so they're just winging it and passing on platitudes. All right, so let's talk about solutions. Two audio programs that are most helpful for releasing the wounds, the trauma from these preachings, and to upgrade your understandings about how life is really set up are, first of all, and I will show these on screen share later. First of all, the holistic breathing technique. 40 minutes of deep, noisy, diaphragmatic breathing. The most powerful way I know to release old wounds, needless fears, and past erroneous teachings. So powerful. Read article number 70 first. Again, holistic breathing technique. And then after about a month of that, once you're more clear, once you've released a lot of those lower energy emotions, then using my audio program that's called Ask Your Soul, Angels in the Light. And that's described in article number 71. To quiet the brain, get in touch with your true self, your higher self, and their wisdom. And then you can ask questions. I recommend at least a once a month meeting with your team, angels, guides, master teachers, the light, and your higher self, and just have a dialogue and check in. Okay, I have these questions. I'm having these challenges. It's a wonderful way to get through life. So I'd like to share a story. I'll call this client Joe, about how a person can make a shift very quickly. So Joe was going to a church that had confession. He was 16 years old, and so it was his first confession. And up until that point, he had bought in hook, line, and sinker. And he's actually excited about his first confession. So he goes in, and the priest, and there are priests in different religions, so I'm not giving anything away, said, well, do you have anything to confess? And Joe's like, no, not really. Anything you want to talk about? Not really. So there's a pause, and the priest said, do you ever have any impure thoughts about girls? So Joe said, at that moment, time stood still. He's like, was this guy crazy? I'm a 16-year-old guy. That's our job. I mean, that's all we do is have impure thoughts about girls. Are you kidding? I saw one say, men, and I think women are just as bad, has a sexual thought every 11 seconds. So here's Joe now. He's saying, okay, here I am, my first confession. Am I going to lie to this guy? Sure, I have impure thoughts. Am I going to tell him that, or am I just going to lie? And he decided to go for the latter. He said, no, not really. And as he walked out of the church, he realized that he felt the control mechanism. Like, what are they doing? What were they trying to do? And now, we didn't even know about pedophiles back then, priest pedophiles. But he said as he walked away from the church, he looked back and the building appeared smaller and it appeared less distinct. It was like hazy or filmy, which, kind of makes you think about the Matrix. What are we seeing, reality or just the energy behind what seems solid? And after that, he never went back. That was it. And he thought for himself. He has a very well-developed cosmology now. So that's how quickly a person can make a shift when you're ready. Now, many benefits naturally flow when you know the big picture of life. And when you've healed and released some of these or all of these preachings, first of all, for the healing part, greater reality healing, your reaction to illness changes because you realize the same power and intelligence that created the cosmos resides in you. That's one reason I became a chiropractic physician. I love that philosophy, which was formed in the late 1800s. Um, Healing occurs above, down, inside, out. And also a reaction to bodily death. When I interviewed Dr. Wayne Dyer, and you can listen to that and other radio shows on my website, I said, what do you say to parents whose kids pass? And he says, I tell them no one really died. He said, we're beings of energy. We're beings of consciousness. We're never born and we never die. And the more you know that, the more you can handle death as just another shift in life, but certainly not an end. And he talked about self-actualizing people, which was one of his terms. He said they deal with death almost as though it doesn't happen. So that's a big difference, of course. For greater reality living, you can enjoy the greatest life you have envisioned. And I'll come back to that word you in a moment. And then for the greater reality helping part, you know that serving others is a big part of this earth experience. You get 10 or 100 times more back when you help others. So regarding the you, capitalize that. So I'm saying you can have the greatest life you have envisioned. Well, you refers to your soul, your consciousness, and that explains why some people have pretty tough lives. And if we're just talking about the humanity part, would say, oh, really? I plan to have cancer. I plan to be paralyzed. I plan to be raped. No, but your soul might have for good reasons. And knowing that helps people then have more peace and joy, meaning to life, even while they're going through the tough times. So that's a tricky one. I discussed this in article number 138 that I just posted a couple hours ago, how to have 11 keys to more peace, joy, and meaning, no matter what your past or current circumstances. All right, so at this point, let's have a short experiential session. Let's have you sit up straight or close your eyes. And on your own, just take a few slow, deep breaths, please. To prepare, I'll ask you 4 questions. And after each one, just let the answer float up, pop in, as we did last class. And I'll leave 30 seconds or so after each question for that. So a few slow, deep breaths. And first of all, what fear-based preachings, if any, scared you in the past? Just let it come into your awareness. This doesn't involve the brain. Next, which of these fear-based preachings have you released and now have more accurate understandings about? Now become aware of which fear-based teachings do you still struggle with, at least a bit. And finally, what would help you more fully resolve the ones you're still struggling with? Good. Now you can open your eyes, and I invite you to prepare for the sharing session with some others and ask you to briefly introduce yourself and tell what brought you here, if you're willing, and then share, if you want, just two things, and this is what we'll focus on, moderators. What, if any, fear-based preachings do you still struggle with, at least somewhat, and what would help you more fully resolve those? By the way, people in groups are welcome to share email addresses to stay in touch with each other or create side groups for discussion and sharing. There's been some interest in that, and we're totally fine with that. It's another way to build the community. All right, with that, over to you, Jax.
All right, we're gonna put everyone in some breakout rooms that I've organized. So see you all in a little bit.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We'll be preparing for Q&A here, but first, while people are getting back, kudos for upgrading your understandings about the nature of reality. And remember that this program and your role in it is going to become even more important next year after official widespread announcements of scientific proof of life after death, and also public demonstrations of communication technology enabling it, yes, at least binary communication with people who have passed on. So being informed, prepared, and grounded, that is, handling this, wrapping your head around even somewhat, will help you and everyone around you. So I mentioned before about having a pen, a recording device, and it's time to do that, please, because I want to show you where the resources are and so on. So I'm going to screen share here. And here we are at soulproof.com, top tab articles. So tonight we're talking about article number 137. Yep, traumatized by fear-based preaching. So this is where you find the articles. We mentioned the great news about the nature of reality, and that's article number 19. And the ones that have to do with the greater reality program itself are 72, which is greater reality living, integrating the great news into your daily life. In other words, how do you live when you know how life is really set up? 82, greater reality healing. And then 119, greater reality helping. So those are the key articles that I want you to know about. Next, the under greater reality programs, so the top tab, this is one of the most important pages for the program because this has a short overview video about the program. Those articles I just mentioned, the key articles behind all this, and then when are the meetings? Again, no meetings next month. How to join them, and then how to receive automated updates, class recordings, suggested action steps. All you have to do is click here and just put your first name and your email, and I guarantee you that will not be given away or sold. So that's an important page. Next, I want to share. So we're under the Greater Reality program, top tab, and then here's the healing, living, and helping part. So this is where you find the videos. I created a number of 30-minute videos. So for Greater Reality Living, creating the greatest life you've envisioned, there are just 2 videos. And so that's where you can find those. And finally, recordings of past meetings. We started in June, and hello. Not sure why that's so slow right now. Here we go. Okay, so here's June, July, August, September, October, and then we'll add November. So this way you can watch past meetings. Finally, the top tab, shop, is where you find the 8 books, which are available for free as ebooks and audiobooks, and then 10 audio programs. So I mentioned tonight the Ask Your Soul, Angels in the Light, and then also the Holistic Breathing audio programs. Those 2 are most helpful for our topic tonight. And then I mentioned also radio shows, top tab, and this is where you can listen to interviews I had with people like Wayne Dyer and Brian Weiss and Michael Newton, founder of Life Between Lives. I mean, just, I listen to them sometimes, just such high-level communication. So I wanted to share all that with you. With that in mind, I invite you to ask questions about the key we covered tonight or any topic, and also invite you to share what you did or did not experience from last month's meeting if you use the identify and fulfill your highest purposes. So that was the theme of last time. Reading article number 21, using that audio program to get in touch with why did you as a soul come here. So that's something else that you're welcome to share or ask about. Again, for those, if possible, enable your video. I'd love to see your face. And who would like to go first? Gina, yes.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hello.
Okay. So I have been thinking about the Soul Phone project, and you're going to be proving that there's life after death.
It's
And
already proven. It's just the seminal article based on several years of 7 different large-scale experiments has been written up. It's being submitted to a scientific journal, and then we'll wait for the announcements when everything is in place. His latest book, that paper, etc. So yeah, life after death has already been scientifically proven. It's just that we don't have all the infrastructure in place to announce it, as Jen and some of us were talking over the break. You know, you only have one chance to make a best first impression. So we want to have our ducks in a row for that.
so I've been thinking about it, and I just thought, so up until all, like in the whole history of humankind, that has been a faith-based, and you're going to turn that into a proven thing, and it's going to change everything. And how some people aren't going to react to it very well. Like, what is the Catholic Church going to say? A lot of churches are going to be upset, I think.
Yeah, they are. And we're prepared for that. Part of what we'll do when we're zeroing in on public announcements and all is meet ahead, or at least we'll invite leaders of all the all the denominations, conservative to liberal and in between, and at least give them a chance to talk about beforehand, perhaps for them to prepare their parishioners. Because as you say, some people think it's like the second coming, the best news ever, and some will be very angry. For example, my own brother, he goes to a denomination where it's believed that the soul of the person that passes on stays in the ground until Judgment Day.
Oh, soul
So,
sleep. What they
yeah,
call soul sleep. Okay.
so when I tell him about near-death experiences and afterlife contacts and soul phone, he's like, the devil's deceiving you, Mark, because the dead know nothing. They're in the ground. I'm like, okay, let's go play pickleball and not talk about this.
I'm super curious to know what we're going to be told from the other side. Like, what are they going to tell us? Are we gonna, is it going to be like a new time of enlightenment where we know things that we've never known? And like when we come here to to experience life, we get that veil of forgetfulness where we forget everything. And if we know for 100% sure that there's reincarnation and the afterlife and all of that, how is it going to affect our learning here on Earth as
Yeah.
human beings?
Well, these are great questions, as always. Well, first of all, when you say when we know, you realize that of the 8 billion or so people, some will know without a doubt, but there are some who will totally reject it and think it's tomfoolery, and don't ask me where that phrase came from, and then all kinds of things in between. So there won't be a uniform reaction. I would say that those who are most spiritually evolved will go, yeah, I knew that. Yeah. And then there will be others that go, yay. Um, and then, as I said, there'll be some that'll be very angry. You're rejecting the word of God, you know. And so we're prepared for all that, but you can't hold back something this big for fear of what some people's reactions are going to be.
Okay. I've just been going over all these things in my mind is going to be crazy.
Yeah, as far, what you kind of alluded to is a question I get asked. It's like, well, if we know for sure, wouldn't it make this earthly experience too easy? Well, I know for sure, and believe me, my life isn't totally easy. There's still enough challenges. So I say we don't have to worry about there being challenges.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. You always ask great questions. Way to be. And I think of Maria as kind of your twin sister because you two are always on these things together. You should meet each other sometime. Go ahead there, Maria.
So funny you said that because I'm going to piggyback what Gina said, and when you said it's going to be launched next year, so and you're prepared for the criticism and for the attack, etc. But obviously, you're going to have proven documentation, proven um, you know scientific you know rationale or some kind of process that you can explain even to the people that are totally skeptical. It's going to be pretty much in black and white. But is that something that the public, like can Gina and I and others and anybody can say, hey, I want to try it out. I want to connect with my son. I want to connect with my daughter. Is that something that the public can have access to then?
Well, that's a whole different topic. So what you were talking about before, yeah, there is going to be that range of reactions. And yes, we are getting everything in place as much as possible before we share that. As far as, I mean, this is a really big deal to establish reliable, rapid, accurate, secure communication technology with another dimension. If it were easy, it would have been done a long time ago. We, several times along the way, we thought we were there, but the equipment was so sensitive that to pick up these post-material persons, it was also picking up all kinds of other background noise and sound. And there have just been all kind of things we run into, but yeah, it's totally predictable. You hear it say, took Thomas Edison 10,000 failures before he successfully perfected the electric light bulb. So we're not discouraged, and we keep going forward. Dr. Schwartz thinks it will happen in his lifetime. He thinks it's just a matter of when, not if now. And keep in mind, some of the people on the A team, for example, Albert Einstein, he never completed his theory of relativity. He didn't achieve his ultimate goal. Same with Nikola Tesla, free energy for all people.
Mhm.
So we say, isn't it ironic? We have some people working on the team who didn't reach their final goals, but perhaps they can help us reach ours and, have a happy ending for everybody. So we want to make it affordable and available as much as possible. Probably the most likely thing is that the first level of service will be an experience. In other words, we will have very secure places where the technology is, and it will be a sole keyboard experience. So, example for you, you could text, type, and then get a reply back. So you wouldn't have to be, this could be done by Zoom, and you wouldn't have to be at the center. Later, we anticipate that there will be an app that can be used with other smart devices. There may be some standalone products, but we don't know. All of this is just trying to think ahead, but I mean, we have to get the switch first, the yes or no, and then the keyboard's just a series of about 40 of those.
So I understand you'll be presenting your speaker next year at the Helping Parents Heal conference. Is
Mhm.
something you're gonna have an opportunity to discuss or to further give us an update of where we are with this project?
Yes, Dr. Schwartz is going to do that. People, they wanted him to do the same presentation
Okay,
last time, but he's going to do something totally different this year. And, our hope is that we'll be able to demonstrate the binary device by then. That's quite a ways off. They're working as hard and fast as they can, and can't do any more than that.
excellent. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Take care. Tara Lynn, you're up.
Yeah, when I first, I had you pretty much answered a couple of the two primary questions. I was going to ask if Gary Swartz was part of this and if there was a panel, and then I was going to ask when this was going to be. I mean, I'm totally stoked for it because, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I was going to add, so you're saying the first unveiling will be at the conference, or is there going to be another time? Because I would
No,
like to kind of view that, and I wanted to ask you, did you tap? Sounds like you tapped
hold on,
into a
hold on.
frequency.
One question at a time.
Okay, I
Yeah,
got excited. I talked to
yeah, I know. Will the unveiling be at the conference? Well, I can't guarantee that. Do we hope that? I mean, it would be wonderful. Dr. Schwartz, Helping Parents Heal, is, keep in mind he's a scientist. He's so in his head, professor and all. However, Helping Parents Heal is a group that has touched his heart more than any group, and he wants to complete it for a number of reasons, but one is for these parents. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do at least some kind of demo. We'll do the actually, we haven't had a strategic planning meeting for a while. At one point we thought, okay, we'll make the announcements with the book and the scientific journal paper. And do we do that before we can do the public demos at the same time parent? We don't know yet. Right now, I'm purposely not bothering him, and I'm just giving it's like a horse that's running. Just give him the rein, let him go, because he's another breed of cat. I mean, there's only so many of them on the planet.
Well, to me, it just sounds very feasible because if we're on a different, like they're on a different radio frequency, and if he can tap into it, like when they're talking about this, supposedly these spaceships that we don't have the technology for, and they're operating on different energies or low energies that we can't tap into. So it makes I don't know, there was another point, but my head is just, I'm just fascinated, and I know it's possible. And it's like, you'd have never thought you could put your picture on a piece of paper, your image on a piece of paper, or videotape you moving in real time, that stays forever. If you can do that, then you can do really just about anything. So,
Yeah, you're right. When I
yeah.
was a kid, they had a cartoon called Dick Tracy, and this guy had a wristwatch, and he could talk and see pictures through it. And I thought, that'll never happen. That's impossible, and now you see how things are. So yeah, we'll get there.
Well, one
And
last thing I want to say is I read last night, this is another thing, that they have already learned how to scan the brain and can come back with, like you were talking about text typing, and that in text can read what you were seeing and thinking in your mind. And this is supposed to be some great thing for people that cannot otherwise communicate.
Mhm.
And I just looked over at my husband and was like, well, hey, honey, they're scanning, it's true. They're scanning brains now. They can read your mind.
It's an exciting time to be alive. One other point you brought up a little bit, and Maria as well, about skeptics. So, that's originally a Greek term. It's considered a good thing, Plato and Socrates. And the term referred to those who um, evaluate the evidence before making an informed decision. So it's a good thing to be a skeptic. However, there are two types of skeptics: open-minded, which we definitely will present the information and work with them, and hopefully they'll understand. But then closed-minded skeptics, we're not going to waste our time because we know from experience it's not worth it. Great questions. Any other questions before we close this evening? Kat, yes, you're up.
Okay. I originally didn't have this particular question, but listening to the discussion, it reminded me. I always have this question. I just love how the progress, the cell phone. I will be the first one to sign up to do this, but I always have this question of, um, are we supposed to have this very seamless connection? Um, I of course want to communicate with my loved ones across the veil, but I always feel that it's by design that we are not like directly connected for our growth, for our learning, because if we know the answer, why would we work hard, right? There are different type of personality, but I somehow summarize in my head how I understand it, why we have different incarnation to this earthly experiences to grow and learn. And the amnesia is part of it, because if we are not going to be harmed and anything, then we might not grow and learn as much. So my question is, I know that technology has advanced so much. There are a lot of impossible that is now just everyday thing, and the communication with the other side fall into that categories, except that I'm not sure if we can do that, not because our ability cannot, but is it by design that we shouldn't be admitted to that side so easily? So that is my question, because I'm like almost like my own devil's advocate. I want you to have the announcement, and then we know there is no end to life.
Yeah.
I know I want.
I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of sides that aren't there. So, different people have referred to the veil, and it's our working assumption that if God, angels, higher beings don't consider that humanity is ready for this technology, that it won't happen. Because it is a responsibility for humanity to use and to use properly. And that's one reason why we're going to make it so secure and safe, because we know there are nefarious people, both on Earth and in the afterlife, who might use it to take advantage to hurt others, like personal identity theft and stealing money and so on. So we take it very seriously. The veil is, I consider, something to protect humanity, because lower energy people, alcoholics and people that, you know, maybe Satan worshipers and stuff like that, they leave themselves open to dark forces, dark entities. And so the veil is like a one-way valve to prevent people from seeing too much too soon and from imbalanced entities affecting people negatively. But those who are more evolved can handle it. So, you know, you say, well, make it too easy if you know all the answers. Well, what can happen is, I mean, I know a lot of people that know a lot about life, but life still goes on around them. I mean, their hearts are touched by disaster to happen. I know a number of people who are so sensitive and developed that they will have a dream that they're helping people who are just in a airplane crash, and they spend all night helping people, and then they wake up in the morning and they say, yep, there was an airplane crash last night. So there's always a lot of work to do, and there's always going to be challenges, even when we know the great news, you know, no one really dies, we're one with the one and all that. So I love the way you're thinking, and you others as well. And this is what we'll need, you see. When it comes time to share, we will ask people who have been attending these, okay, we need ambassadors. We need people to go out and share it with your circles. And that's why I say these meetings are actually part of your training. All right, well, we are at our time, and so we want to honor the time schedule and so on. So I encourage you to read article number 137, use the holistic breathing technique and ask your soul audio programs, and then share next meeting if you like. How did it go? Do you have questions? Also remember that you can email me, mark@soulproof.com. I'll get a lot of emails from people around the world every day, so my answers will be short and to the point, but information dense. We hope you'll bring a friend in January as we discuss key number 1, which is using conscious language, more accurate language to know and show about the great news. Because, and the reason it's so important is your words shape what you think and believe. And that in turn affects how you feel and act. So that's why it's so important to use more accurate terms now that we know more about the nature of reality when you're thinking, speaking, and writing. So for example, I'm working with people who are grieving, they say, I lost my father last week. I'm like, no, you didn't. He's probably standing right beside you. You know, that's how people used to think you lost him. But now that we know that no one really dies and connections, relationships continue, lost is not a good accurate term. And that's just an example of a number of them that we'll look at. So in closing, when I was preparing a recent article, I went to theology school so many years ago, and I thought, well, where did the word religion come from anyway? And I looked it up, and the original meanings included to connect with the divine and sacred in life. So for the theme, the key that we just covered, you can say if teachings scare people, they aren't truly religious. So please remember that important distinction as you explore, as you run into ideas that you discuss with others about life, death, and afterlife. Hope to see you next month and the Sunday meeting in a couple weeks if you'd like to join us. Until then, let it shine. God bless.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody. Nice.
You are very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Night.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you.
Bye.